And we need our cup of tea today because today we are starting our visa application.
So, as we mentioned last time around, we're going to go to Morocco, and what we didn't fancy doing was taking 90 days from leaving England to get to Morocco, because whilst that's feasible, it would require things like crossing the Bay of Biscay in one go, and some longer sails, I would think, down the Atlantic coast of Portugal to finally get to Morocco. So we had a look at different options, and one of the options was that France is one of two European countries that actually will still offer a tourist visa to UK nationals, the other country being Sweden. And therefore, if you're a tourist and you want to go to France for longer than your Schengen 90 days, you can apply for a visa which allows you to stay between 3 and 6 months, and as long as you can satisfy the requirements of the embassy, then or the consulate, then you can go for up to 6 months
Yeah.
without using any of your Schengen days. So what we thought was, well, we love France. We've been through France a few times, and this idea of sailing the coast of France sounds pretty marvelous to us. Food, wine, culture. Oh, obviously the French are there as well, which is the downside. Not only joking.
And let me pause my husband before he gets us banned from France before we've even arrived. Because we are joking. One thing we've heard over and over about the people of northern France is that they are absolutely lovely. They're kind, funny, warm, welcoming, and friendly. Just like the people in northern England, really.
Um, but yeah, the idea of taking 4 months to sail through France and then going from a kind of northern Spain to Morocco in our 90 Schengen days sounds a lot more feasible.
It does.
And the dehumidifiers just come back on. There you go. We must have humidified the environment with all of our hot air.
We'll blame you.
Yeah. So anyway, we thought let's get one of these tourist visas, and then the Schengen days are a lot more manageable in terms of the 90 and 180. So that we started to have a look into that process, and that process we were helped out a lot by the Cruising Association. So the Cruising Association, they produce videos usually once a year, which kind of outlines the overall application process, etc., for this tourist visa with respect to sailors. And that was really, really helpful, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Because that meant that we kind of had an overview of the overall process, and we knew kind of what we had to have prepared and some of the things we needed to outline to the French government in order that they could just see that we were tourists and that we were going to go.
Yeah.
So the work started in advance before we went, and it starts with applying to a processing centre called a TLS centre. They are employed by not just the French government but the Germans and the Belgians and so on to kind of filter applications before the consulates then go on to process them and issue visas. I guess they're just checking that people have filled in the forms correctly,
Yeah.
they've got the right evidence and so on and so forth. But it is an additional bureaucratic step, and it also meant that you've got to go to a TLS centre in person as well.
Yeah, so there's three options for those. You can either go to London, Manchester, or Edinburgh. Um, we didn't fancy the drive over to Manchester. I hate driving to Manchester, even if I'm not the one actually doing the driving. London's a long way away, and Edinburgh is a very nice city just north of the border, easy for us to get to, short train hop. So
Yeah.
we chose Edinburgh.
So we filled in all of our stuff on a website for the TLS, and then prepared all of our documentation, and then buggered off to Edinburgh for the day. Now, in terms of the documentation, a broad outline of it is you kind of need to tell them why you're going. So you need to write a letter which expressly tells them, where you're going, how long you're going to be there for, and so on. You need to promise not to work while you're there or seek employment while you're there, so you're definitely going to be a tourist. You need to prove that you've got the funds to cover yourself whilst you're there. You also need to prove ownership of your boat and insurance papers, etc. And you also need to prove who you are. Like, so, yeah, passport, etc., marriage certificates, etc. So Yeah, I think it was all quite straightforward to gather the information, although it was quite a
It was
time-consuming process.
time consuming. It took a good while. It took probably an entire ream of paper as well that we were printing out.
Yeah, because you've got to take originals and multiple copies. And the Cruising Association had kind of outlined that they take 3 copies of everything, so we did that as well. So we arrived up there with originals and 3 copies. Oh no, I'm getting forward myself now, so it doesn't matter. We can edit that bit out.
We'll cue the music. You can have a nice little overview of what we did in Edinburgh for a couple of minutes, and then we'll talk about how it went at the TLS Centre.
Yes.
Documents gathered and bags packed, we shipped Captain Newey off to our grandparents and got the metro west from the coast into Newcastle. There's Gray's Monument, looking rather fine on this sunny day. Then it was a short walk to Newcastle Central Station, a Grade 1 listed building designed by John Dobson. Our train was on time, hallelujah. Then Rob got into a fight with a rather disappointing bottle of wine. But he won in the end. Cheers. It wasn't long before we arrived in Edinburgh and began exploring. We loved the pretty streets and beautiful architecture. Couldn't resist this sign. And before we knew it, it was evening and time to grab some grub. There was only one thing for it. French food, of course. Le Bistrot in the heart of Old Town was actually housed in the French embassy. We enjoyed scallops and duck and practiced our French. The next morning it was visa time. More on that later. Mwah to you too. Afterwards we had time to check out a museum. This is the National Museum of Scotland. There's a light from a lighthouse. A sperm whale jawbone. And we thought this was a boat at first glance. Turns out it's a feasting bowl from the South Pacific. And we still managed to cram in some cool rocks for Jane. And some boats in the Rising Tide exhibit. Anyway, that's enough exploring. Back to Reach Out.
So what was our experience of going up to Edinburgh and dealing with the TLS Centre? I would say that from the Cruising Association, the Cruising Association webinar, which I said is brilliant, it's really, really helpful. That was an hour and a half long, and I watched last year's and this year's, so I've seen 3 hours of it, right? So, yeah, you need quite a bit of popcorn to get through 2 episodes of that, let me tell you.
It was very useful. We're very pleased that we did it.
But it kind of sets a tone of... I was a bit nervous before I went up.
I was too. I was expecting a long wait and a lot of bureaucracy and almost like a bit of a grilling, really.
Yeah, yeah. I was expecting, to be more or less interrogated. I was expecting to be missing bits of paper that I needed, or I didn't have enough copies of certain things, or maybe I'd omitted something in my covering letter, or whatever. But we were in and out in 43 minutes. Now, I got talking to the lady in there as well who was processing my application because, I like to talk to people. But anyway, I was saying to her, this is so quick, this is so easy. Is this normal? Because is it different down in London, for example? And she said, no, we aim to have you done within 20 minutes. And the reason it's taking a bit longer today is because we've just moved to this new building and got new staff and new processes, etc. And therefore it's taking a bit longer. So she says, this is slow.
So they were like apologising that it had only taken 45 minutes because to them it wasn't only 45 minutes, it was double what they were hoping for.
It was 43 minutes. But anyway, we booked a train back from Edinburgh thinking, well, when do we come back? We don't know when we're going to book it for. You don't want to book it too early and be still in the processing centre. And actually, we'd booked it for 7 o'clock at night, which we kind of regretted, and we did change. But yeah, in and out in 43 minutes, really pleasant people. We're super excited that they were dealing with an application that was a bit different. It's on a boat and, you're going to live on your boat, etc. But they were absolutely lovely.
Yeah, so we entered the building and we just said while we were there, they told us to take a seat when they were ready for us. We were escorted in the lift upstairs. There is security. There's like an airport style scanner. They were all really nice and friendly as well. Show you original ID documents for the first sort of step, and then you move into the main office. Comfy seats, you just wait. There's almost like a doctor's waiting room. You just wait for your number to flash up, and then it's your time to go up to the desk with all your bits and pieces. Again, staff there were really nice, having a little chat about what we were doing. And then the last bit, sit back down for a few more minutes, wait for your number to pop back up, and then it's the biometric side, which I think was why it was slowing down, because they only had one biometric thing going. But they just take your fingerprints, take a photo, and that was it. We were free to go. Although they thought maybe you were a vampire because they couldn't get your photograph.
Yeah, which is a problem I can't get hats to fit, and I can't get photographs to take pictures of my face properly. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's something to just do with my head in general. You're not supposed to laugh.
Sorry.
So yeah. Yeah, is this great? No, it's not great, because we'd much rather just do what we used to do, which was sail to France without all this bureaucracy and cost, which we'll get onto in a bit. But yeah, I mean, it's a process. You follow it, you dot your I's, you cross your T's, and it's no big deal, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so at this moment of time, we don't actually know if we have the visa or not, but so far everything's gone really smoothly.
That's a really good point.
So if the next episode is
yeah, because we're saying it was fine, but we don't
easy.
actually have the visa yet. Now we've been passed over to the consulate, and we're expecting to receive our visas in 3 weeks, and if we don't,
it'll be plan B.
So how much did this cost? Well, we spent on a TLS service fee £48.40 each. We also had to pay £30 each to have our passports returned to us by courier. This was optional, but the other option would have been to drive back up to Edinburgh or get the train back to Edinburgh to pick them up. The visa application fee was £85.49 each. And then for train travel, we spent £29.50 on our return journey each, and another £19 each to change our return journey to come home earlier. We also paid £84 for the hotel. So in total, for two of us, we spent over £500, and we still don't know if we have the visa. And on that note, while this gorgeous seal plays in the time, I'll say, join us next week when we call Reach Out, out! Wish us good luck, and I'll wish you fair winds. Like, comment, and subscribe.